Hi, Cory along with Neil Rudel. We're live in Tampa, Florida, previewing Penn State's Outback Bowl matchup Saturday against Florida. Really an intriguing week, lots of different storylines that don't have anything to do with the game. First and foremost, the future of Joe Paterno. Sue Paterno addressed some rumors earlier this week. How do you see how everything's played out so far?
Well, I mean, the whole thing's out of hand. I mean, the whole internet explosion of somebody constructed an email that apparently exaggerated Joe's physical condition and his health, and that just ran rampant through I mean, it had been viewed by hundreds of thousands of people. So the family felt the need to address it. Joe has said he has no plans to go anywhere. He feels great. Sue said, Sue's pretty angry about how this thing had kind of taken on a life of its own. And Joe said he hasn't thought about retiring. So, that's hard for me to believe because he's 84. But the fact is he does plan to be back next year. But it is hard to believe that he hasn't even thought about retiring.
We're going to get into this in a blog or a column in a day or so. But our colleague at the Mirror, Philip Smord, pointed this out in an email. If you haven't thought about retiring, aren't you doing an incredible disservice to the university and the program? Okay, that's fine if you want to come out and say I'm not retiring, fine.
Right.
But if you want to word it that way, and whether we're being too semantic about it or not, that's what he said. He hasn't thought about it.
Right.
Somebody needs to be thinking about it.
Exactly. Yeah, and if he won't think about it, and obviously his family isn't thinking about it, then the university has to think about it.
And they're not, apparently.
Yeah, well, I think they're not doing. They're publicly. They're not thinking
right.
about it. Whether they'll work with Joe privately, who knows? I mean, it's made for a very difficult. Joe's put them in a very difficult situation. You don't want to force Joe out, and that's not what this is about. But at least you want to address succession, whether it's an in-house guy understood that would be the next guy. I mean, just for the purpose of recruiting.
Athletic Director Tim Curley did come out and say today he plans for Joe to be back in 2011. He also said they do not have an associate head coach or assistant head coach plan in the works. Now, again, as Neil said, maybe that's their public statement. When Joe was injured a few years ago, Galen ran the offense, Tom Bradley ran the defense. They had some semblance of order, but you simply have to have a contingency plan at this stage in the game.
Yeah, I agree, and I think maybe some of this will begin to take shape in the offseason because, I mean, maybe the university is just waiting him out. Also, he has one more year. Who says that they'll really renew more than a year-to-year basis, if that? So I do believe he's put them in a tough position, but we'll see what their posture is during this offseason.
We're going to talk a little bit about the game on a video tomorrow, and there are some interesting elements of the game. Florida's 3 quarterbacks, how will Penn State's defense respond? But again, so many stories off the field. We got a chance to see Tom Bradley. I know you're writing about that in the Mirror. Your thoughts on Tom Bradley getting bypassed by Temple and where he stands right now?
I don't think Tom really wanted the Temple job that bad. Whether he would have taken it or not, I don't know. But I just think what you're seeing now is that you're seeing at the kind of what could be the end of the Paterno era within the next year or two, and there's some uncertainty among the assistants. And of course, none of these guys are really going to get into this publicly because they can't, and that's not the right thing to do. But I think maybe Tom would have been interested in the Pitt job, but none of these guys really ever leave here, but I think he might have taken the Pitt job. I'm really not convinced that he would have taken the Temple job, evidenced by the fact that Joe said that he would have helped him with Temple, but I don't think it ever got to that point.
You want to talk about really just a mess of a situation. You've got the Florida football program. Their head coach is leaving. Their offensive coordinator, Adazio, already has a job lined up at Temple, although he will be here for the game. Their defensive coordinator, Terrell Austin, the Pitt grad, he was in the hospital Tuesday. He is a candidate for the defensive coordinator job at Texas. They've got four starters injured, including probably their best defensive back in Janoris Jenkins, and their quarterback is thinking about transferring. I mean, what a total discombobulation that whole program has got to be at this point.
Right. It almost makes Penn State seem a little more stable.
Right. It's odd. I mean, what would you expect from those kids and that entire operation? Now, Iowa has got getting players arrested and all this stuff left and right, and Iowa comes back out last night and wins its bowl game. You know, what can Florida do to put all this stuff behind them?
Winning. Win the game. That kind of cures. I mean, and the same with Penn State. I mean, this has not been a good year for Penn State football, at least on the field. And this would at least be a signature win over a name program. This is not a great Florida team, but 8-5 versus 7-6, a lot different.
Last thing, Joe's 84, keeping going. Urban Meyer's 46. I made a point that Joe returns next year. It'll be his 46th season as the head coach, which is as many years as Urban Meyer has been alive.
Yeah.
The irony in that whole situation is really just mind-boggling.
It is, and other than the Auburn and Oregon game where they're playing for something, this game has more intrigue around it because of that very element. You have a 46-year-old who is going to spend more time with his family and walk away, and you have an 84-year-old who gets irritated at the subject.
We do have a lot of football topics yet to get to. We'll discuss those on a video tomorrow. For Neil Rudel, I'm Cory Geiger. Thanks for tuning in.